This is not going to end well for me. Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and this is the post-Geekout reaction for part 1 of Netflix's Iron Fist. I am talking about the first 6 episodes right now, and if you have not seen a post-Geekout reaction before, then this is not a review, it's just my open, honest discussion about the thing that I just watched. I will be doing a mini review of the entire series when it's all done, so if you want to avoid all spoilers, then tune out now, come back for that mini review. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and talk about Iron Fist. Oh God. Okay, let me just go ahead and let you know where I am at this moment. We all heard about the terrible reviews that this was getting. Just the awful, awful reviews. It's got like a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. And yet when it came out, audiences were really digging it. Like, it's gotten 88% from audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. And I've been going through Twitter, I've been going through Tumblr. It has got an overwhelming showing of support from the fans. The fans are really digging it. I've been hearing from you guys. When I was tweeting along to it at Professor Thorgy, you guys were saying, yeah man, I'm really enjoying it. I was getting tons of people saying, hey man, don't listen to the critics. Ignore the critics out there. The critics don't know what they're talking about. Guys, I hate telling you this. I talk about movies and TV shows and review them for a living. I'm kind of a critic. I kind of am one of those guys, especially when it comes to Iron Fist, because guys, I'm sorry. I tried. I really freaking tried on this one. You know me. I'm not even gonna lie. I am a Marvel fanboy. I love the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've been saying for the longest time, I do not think that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done anything bad. Sorry for that car outside. I don't think that they've made a bad film yet. They have made a couple of films that are just okay. They've made a couple of films that were missteps, but they're still watchable. I can still enjoy stuff in them. They haven't made a Suicide Squad yet. They haven't made a Batman vs. Superman. They have not made something that I'm like, this is just garbage. This is just crap. Until now. I'm only up to episode 6. I'm halfway through, and that is where the critics stopped. The critics only reviewed the first 6 episodes. So I don't know what happens after this. However, you guys have been telling me it gets really good in the end. But I've been following some other critics on Twitter, and they disagree. So I'm kind of like, oh God, it's gonna be one of these. And I know people are saying, oh, well, you let yourself be influenced by the critics. You heard all the critics say it was bad, so you went in there looking for it to be bad. That isn't how my brain operates. I know how my brain works. If everybody tells me something is bad, my expectations get low. So it is way easier for me to go in and watch something that's not that good and think it's actually pretty darn good if everybody's been telling me it's bad. And if everybody's been telling me something's great, my expectations are high, and it's a lot harder for those things to meet those expectations. So honestly, just knowing how my brain works, hearing that the critics did not like this did not make me instantly dislike this. If anything, I think it might have helped. So, alright, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Alright, episodes 1 and 2 were the first 2 that I watched, obviously. That's the dumbest sentence I could have said. What I meant by that is that I stayed up until 3 a.m. when the show premiered, and I watched those first 2 episodes before going to bed, and I was stunned by them. It was so... It didn't even feel like the other Netflix shows. That was the thing that kept getting me all throughout it, is that I was just like, all the other Netflix shows feel real. All the other Netflix shows feel like they're actually in New York. They actually feel like they're in actual physical locations. When they're shooting in someone's apartment, it does not feel like a set. It feels like someone's apartment. When they're going down the streets of New York, it feels like they're going down the streets of New York. These feel like real people in real locations. That's one of the things that impressed me so much. Sure, there were times in, like, say, Jessica Jones where she was using her superpowers where I was like, that doesn't really look all that real. Like when she lifts up the car, I'm like, all right, that's happening on a set right there. But aside from that, for the vast majority of them, they all felt like, yeah, these are in actual locations. Iron Fist, in the first 2 episodes, this felt like a basic cable TV show. This felt like everything was on set. Like, there's a moment in which they are going and calling Wing's dojo, and it looked like if you went up to the windows and tapped on them, you would just hear bricks. Like, it looked like everything was just painted onto the walls there. It looked like if you turned the camera the wrong way, you would see just an empty lot scene behind it off to the right. It looked so much like a set. I know it wasn't. That's the thing that's driving me nuts. I'm not coming in here and saying, oh, well, they clearly just built all these sets rather than in the other shows where they actually found locations. No, you do see the rest of her dojo. You do see everything in there. You know this is an actual place. And if it is a set, they actually built every single thing in there to make it feel like a real place. But nothing in there was shot like it was a real place. Like when he is in the park at night, I was like, it feels like they just put a tree in a parking lot and had him sit there. Like, this does not feel like an actual location. That is how every single thing in the first 2 episodes was shot, especially the flashbacks to Kunlun. And I know one of the things that this show has taught me is that apparently I've been mispronouncing every single thing about Iron Fist's legacy completely incorrectly over all these years. So I apologize that it's pronounced Kunlun. And I'm going to keep calling it Kunlun by accident. I'm going to try and correct myself, but I've been calling it Kunlun throughout my entire comic book reading life. Sorry if I can't course correct that on a dime. I will try and get that right. But every single time in which it flashes back to him there in the mountains or him on the plane, which by the way, oh my god, in that first episode, I saw his parents die more times than Batman's. Alright, I get it. I fully understand. I know there were people who told me on Twitter, it's like, well, it's supposed to be a guy with PTSD. I applaud them for taking that approach. That is exactly the kind of approach that they should take, especially if they want to make more of a realistic version of these characters' origin stories, which is what they're going for. If Danny Rand is a guy who suffered through something this traumatic, yeah, he would have PTSD from that. So if that's what they wanted to do with it, fine. But just speaking in terms of crafting a story, hitting that flashback so many freaking times in one episode, I was like, oh my god, dude, I get it. But every single time that it did flashback, it would have like such that weird like shaky cam on, and it would just be filmed in like that weird like choppy, almost still images kind of way. That I was like, this does not feel anything like the other shows. This feels like the reenactments on a crime TV channel show. This feels like something that you would see on Unsolved Mysteries when you have the narrator stand up there and is like, and then on that day, Danny Rand disappeared in the plane. And then you would see like a bad reenactment of a looking, no, and then the dad going, I love you, Danny. Which, oh my god, such a robot. I know I'm supposed to feel like horrified at the sight of his mom being blown out, but it was so cartoonish, man. I almost wanted to laugh at that if I wasn't stunned that they actually put that out there. But I'm jumping all over the place here because that first episode also kind of just jumped all over the place there. I mean, for God's sake, they have a mystical, magical, homeless man just show up and is like, I have all the answers on this phone that I happen to find. By the way, I'm this guy, blah, blah, blah. Don't get used to seeing me. And speaking of that homeless guy, oh my god. Again, one of the things I have loved about the Netflix shows is that they all feel real. Is that these characters feel real. And I'm not talking about the protagonists, I'm talking about everybody. Foggy Nelson feels like some up-and-coming jokey lawyer guy, especially when like he's hitting the bar by himself. It's not even when he's just hanging around with Matt. Like even when he is by himself, he feels real. Karen Page feels real. Every single person in these shows feel real. And then you just have some random guy pop up like he's the wacky, goofy neighbor on a sitcom. Like it felt like he was just popping in over the fence to give you helpful advice in your life, and then he just went back to his own life. It's like, where did this guy even come from? This does not feel real. That does not feel like the rest of these shows. And the dude dies from a heroin overdose, and he's some big like buff dude there. And I'm like, you're a tank. You would not be some guy who was about to OD. This is not, oh my god. I mean, just go back to the character in Jessica Jones who had a drug problem and compare him to this dude here. Oh my god. Okay. Sorry. But as I said, the characters always feel real. Let's get into the actual characters here. Because another thing that the Netflix shows do so well are these characters. The Netflix shows are sold primarily on the personalities of these characters. And again, I'm not even just talking about the protagonist. Everybody has such personality, has such identities in every single one of their shows, and you instantly like them, or you are instantly able to identify them. I mean, look at Luke Cage. Yeah, Luke himself has got a big personality in there, but Pops, jeez, Pops is only there for like 2 episodes. That dude is overflowing with personality. And then you go into the villains, there are so many villains in there, and yes, some of the villains are like jokey like Shades, but even he's kind of got personality in there. But then you go into like Cottonmouth, and you go into Maria, and they have such defined personalities in there as well. Every single one of these characters are so memorable. The characters in Iron Fist, I don't give a crap about them. I mean, you've got Iron Fist himself, who everything that he says, it doesn't matter what he's doing, everything is in this tone. When he's talking about how he is the immortal weapon, this is how he talks. Or when he's talking about how he's going to help this poor lady whose son is dying of cancer, this is exactly how he talks. And there are moments in which he's trying to be goofy with it, but then there are moments in which he's trying to be dead serious, and it's like, okay, you can have the guy who's kind of like all over the place. I've seen that work before, but not when you're acting the exact same way in every single one of these roles. Like, every time that he is just trying to kind of be like jokey, it is so flat. The jokes do not land for me. Like, in that opening in which he's going in there and trying to get into the building, I was like, this can't, like, that was the moment in which, like, my stomach sank. When I saw him trying to talk his way into the building, I was like, I'm not buying this for a second. This instantly is falling flat for me. But it might get better, might get better, might get better. I mean, after all, this is all about the kung fu. This is all about the action. When that kicks in, and then he has to take out the security guards, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys, and the car out there agrees with me. I've always had a problem with the action in the Netflix shows. I know people applaud them non-stop for the action. They say the action is amazing there. To me, the action in every single one of them feels kind of choreographed. Like, you can tell it's all stuff that they planned out. But they do stuff with that action that is impressive. They do stuff with it that's amazing. Like in Daredevil, everybody applauds the hallway fight scene. I will admit, I thought the hallway fight scene felt a little too choreographed. However, the fact that they're able to make it all look like one cut, I'm like, I don't care if it looks too choreographed. This is impressive. I am stunned by this. Or like Luke Cage, the big boxing fight scene there at the end, that actually didn't feel that choreographed to me, and even if it did, they were doing those flashbacks to him as a kid. I was like, all right, they're putting in the emotional stuff in here. Or, you know, like going back to Daredevil, with some of the other fight scenes that looked too choreographed, they were still like really gruesome and bloody, and I was stunned by what they were getting away with, so I was able to ignore how choreographed they felt. Or like with Jessica Jones, I honestly thought the action in Jessica Jones was kind of crap. However, it's not about the action. It's always about the psychological drama. So it's like, all right, who cares if the action looks bad? You're hitting the notes that need to be hit. You're hitting the psychological notes, which is what this show is all about. Iron Fist is all about the action. And as soon as I saw him take out those security guards, I went, that is the most choreographed thing I have ever seen. And it keeps going on like that. Like when he's in the mental institution and that dude like throws the punch at him, I was like, you don't even get close to that dude when you flip him. It's not even, like, jeez. Okay, I'm trying to pick, like, the best examples here, but every single example is jumping out at me. Like, the hallway fight scene when he was going up against the Hatchet Men, there's moments in which he is kicking dudes, and they are falling in ways that they should not fall. There is, like, he's not even getting close with some of his punches, and they're going down, and I'm like, this is insane. This is insane that you got someone who doesn't know how to direct action to direct the show that relies entirely on action. Sorry. I need a second to recenter myself and focus my chi now. Okay, I got a little carried away there. But going into the other supporting characters, the Meachums, I don't give a crap about any of them. Ward Meachum is such a cartoon, and I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that as in, like, he is so flat and just flat out not even trying to hide that he's evil. At least Kingpin, if you met Kingpin and you were like, oh yeah, I don't think this guy's on the up and up, at least he'd be able to like charm you, at least be able to win you over. Or like with Kilgrave, that dude was very layered and had a lot of dimensions to him. He was a sociopath, but you could really like see that he had wheels turning in his head. Ward is just a weenie. He is just the biggest weenie, and I get that he's supposed to be like some guy who has been beaten down by his father, and that his father is just standing over him the whole time, and that's why he is that way. And I get that, but it doesn't make me want to like his character. It doesn't make, and I don't mean like his character as in think he's a good character. I mean like him as in think he's an interesting character. Yes, there's a reason for the way he acts that way, but it's so annoying to watch. Like, every single line out of his mouth, I was like, oh god, someone just punch him. And I don't mean that as in like he's evil, someone must stop him. I mean that as in someone has to get him to stop talking. And Joy, she actually does get a little bit interesting. She actually does kind of get interesting when she starts making those deals and you start seeing her negotiate. It's like, okay, she was kind of bad in the first 2 episodes, but there's stuff to her character. So I'll give you that. She actually does show some different sides to her, especially when she is negotiating some deals that she knows are bad. And I'm like, okay, this is actually a good moment because I'm looking at her no longer as a flat character. She now is somebody who does have some different layers to her. You can see that she's having to deal with the situation that she's in. And also, I hated the dad when I first saw him because I was like, you might as well just have like a metal claw and be sitting there with a cat on your lap because, again, so cartoonishly evil. But when he gets to that point in which he tells the origin story of why he is where he is and that he's indebted to the hand, I was like, okay, you know what? Let's see where this goes. And then you see like his reaction to seeing his daughter for the first time in all these years. I was like, okay, something's going on here. You've actually got some emotions in this character. And then you see that he actually goes out to hurt the hatchet man who hurt his daughter. And I was like, okay, again, showing that this is a guy who has dimensions to him. He is a guy who, he isn't just cartoonishly evil. He's willing to get his hands dirty, but he's willing to get his hands dirty for his daughter. And it's also very interesting seeing the dynamics between him and the hand, in that the fact that the hand would actually let him do that. Also, I realized that the thing I just said wasn't a full, complete sentence. But I'm going kind of fast here, so I apologize. There's a lot to cover in 6 episodes. Okay, I will admit, on those 2 characters, I started to turn around, and I really turned around on Colleen Wing. Because the first time that we really see her, when she's with her students, and she's like, you walk like a fat duck. And I was like, that is one of the worst line readings I've ever heard. That was an awful reading. And that is another problem that I have with this entire show, is that, I'll get more into this later, but everything in this show really feels like they did it on the first take. Like, whatever the first take was, where they all said their lines correctly, they're like, cool, move it along, we gotta do this. And that take was awful. I can't imagine anybody actually thinking that take worked. I know people are going to say, well, she was supposed to be like exhausted and she didn't really know how to teach these kids, so she was trying to think of the right words to say. That's what they were going for. I understand that. It was still a bad reading even for that. Even with that being the motivation behind that reading, that was an awful reading, and that was the first time that I really saw her character like acting, and I was like, oh god, this is not going to go well. Oh, this is trouble. However, I really turned around on her. In the next couple of episodes, when we actually saw her like interacting with Danny, interacting more with her students, going to those cage matches, which I said I thought the action was directed terribly, the cage matches are actually directed well. I actually think those are done pretty darn well. So pretty much everything with Colleen, at the moment I'm digging. The first impression was really bad, but I actually think she got pretty darn good. So you see, I'm not just full on hating on this show. There's actually are some things in here that I'm enjoying. Just, it's not the protagonist. I have to go back to that, and I hate insulting people's acting. I really do. I know that doesn't seem obvious right now from everything that I just said. However, I'm one of those guys who is like, well, if I'm bad at something, it's kind of wrong for me to really critique other people for it, and I can't act to save my life. You guys have seen me do skits on this channel before, so I know that I am not the best guy to critique someone's acting, but dang, Danny Rand is such just... he's a flat character trying to be interesting, because if you look at what they have on paper for Danny Rand in here, it's good. That is a realization that I came to in the 6th episode, is that if I just had the script for this show, it actually sounds pretty darn good. Like, I just shut my ears, shut my eyes, open my ears, and only listen to the words that are being said, only think about what they're trying to do, it would work. However, the actor, again, just speaks everything in this one tone at all times. I was like, okay, dude, this is not working at all. And the director is not stopping him. The director is not stopping to make him go back and redo this stuff. They're not coming in here and trying to, like, add any flair to anything that he's doing. Like, that's another thing that I noticed, is that in the first couple episodes, there's almost, like, no music. Like, there is music in scenes, but I mean, there's, like, supposed to be emotional moments that could have used, like, a little bit of music in the background, and they just go completely quiet on that, and the camera's not doing anything interesting. It's just sitting there, and made me realize, I don't think the people working on this show really gave a crap. Like, I do think that the actors really cared. I think that they were trying their best. Sometimes they weren't doing the best job, but that should have been the director who came in there and told them to redo it or give them some more motivation in there. But when you look at how just basic the camera work is, and how bad the choreography is in their fight scenes, and how the camera isn't even trying to hide that, and how the editors aren't really trying to do anything interesting, it made me realize, I think this was just like the thing they handed to their B team. I think this is what they handed their B team, because they were like, alright, we got Defenders coming up. That's the big thing. Put all the A team on that, because that's got to come out right away. That's got to be there on time. Iron Fist, whoever we got left, just throw it on that show. And I really realized that when it got to the 6th episode, because episodes 1 and 2, as I said, I did not like those episodes. I did not. They really bugged me. But episode 3 was okay. Episode 4 getting a little bit better. You know, 5, at this point, you've introduced Claire, and anytime that you introduce Claire into one of these shows, it instantly gets better. She's becoming one of my favorite characters, and she, again, is great in here. And then they take them to the dock, and they have that fight scene in the truck. It's like, you know what? That fight scene actually was not that bad, and it's actually kind of interesting. Having it in the back of a moving truck, that's actually kind of a cool thing to do. And pretty much anytime that one of these Netflix shows go to the docks, it gets a lot better. I've noticed that. I was expecting to see Turk show up at some point. But yeah, that actually was a pretty decent episode. By the time I got to episode 5, I was like, you know what? This actually is getting better. I actually am starting to enjoy this show. Maybe it's the fact that the critics could only review the first 6 episodes. And they saw episode 1 and 2, and they were stunned by how it wasn't anywhere near as good as the previous shows. Those first 2 episodes, I do stand by saying that they were pretty darn bad. And those critics just weren't able to get over that. They weren't able to get past that when it went into reviewing the rest of the shows. But me, as somebody who heard all the bad reviews, I'm now looking for the positives in here. I'm looking for stuff to save this show. So episode 3, 4, and 5, I see it getting better. You know what? I got hope again. I think this is actually going to be a good show. Then episode 6 came along, and that is the one in which he has the tournament against the Hands Special Forces. Oh my god, that was the worst episode yet. That took all the hope that I had been building up and dropped it back down to 0. Because A, as I mentioned, they don't know how to shoot fight scenes, and this is the show that is all about fight scenes. And the fights that he had against the Weapon Master guy, the last guy he had to go up against, listen, the 2 Russian brother guys, alright, that actually was an okay fight, alright, not too bad. Then you get into the weird spider lady, not that great, and I'll talk about the reasons for that in a minute. But then you go up against the Weapon Master, and I'm like, well, this is the one that's going to win back. This is the one that's going to be amazing, because it's just him fighting some dude with weapons. That is some of the worst choreography and worst editing I have ever seen in a fight. That stunned me, that they looked at that and said, yeah, this is okay to put out. Because I had to constantly, all throughout this fight, stop the video, rewind by a couple seconds, just to try and figure out what I just saw. Because like there's that moment in which the spear breaks because it hits that pole, and it's like the spear is broken in one shot, the previous shot is when he swings it, and I was like, I didn't even see it hit something there, and I had to rewind it, and there's like one frame of it smacking into something, and the next frame it's almost already broken, and I'm like, you're cutting out frames in this, and it's jumping all over the goddamn place. This entire... okay, sorry. My god. Guys, I'm sorry. I am really trying to just not go on a massive rant here, but it is just mind-boggling to me. I can't even put into words that they looked at that and they went, this is okay to put up there. They looked at that and they did not say, we need to reshoot this now. We need to look at all the footage that you took and figure out how to edit this together. And my fear is, maybe it was worse. Maybe this is the good version that we got. Maybe there actually was a version of this that was shot and edited together and they went, this makes no sense at all. Let me see all the footage you got. And they tried to salvage it, but they just didn't shoot anything good in there. There are so many just tiny little jumps and frames in there that just don't connect anything. It's just random crap happening. Like there's a moment in which they will be swinging the weapon and then the next shot it's going in a different direction. This doesn't make sense. I can't understand someone thinking that was okay. Okay, sorry. So as I said, the choreography is not good. But here is the thing about episode 6 that made me look back at the previous episodes and realize what the big problem is. It's that Daredevil, everything looked very real. Jessica Jones, everything looked very real. Luke Cage, everything looked very real. When you get to Iron Fist though, yes, it is being shot in New York. However, this is a dude who lived in a mystical, magical kingdom that disappears every 10 to 15 years, and he has glowy fire fist powers, and he got those powers by literally fighting a dragon. If there is any show that you are actually going to spend your budget on, if there's any show that you are going to take all the profits from the previous 3 other series and go, we need to save it to make this look good, it's Iron Fist. This is the cheapest looking one of them all. This has the worst production value out of any of the other shows. Like when Daredevil goes and storms the Hand Special Sanctum, it actually looks pretty darn intimidating. When Iron Fist goes to the Hand Special Tournament place, it really looks like they just set up like a student production of the Iron Fist play in like a school gymnasium. Like it looks like if you pushed on one of the walls, it would fall over flat and there would be a kid climbing a rope and doing gymnastics on the other side of it. This entire show looks so freaking cheap, and out of all of these shows, it's the one that needed the highest budget. It's the one that needed to look the crispest and the cleanest, and it looks like they, as I said, they just went, we gotta move this thing along because Defenders is coming right up. Like one of the things that makes the Marvel Netflix shows so good is that it actually goes into these characters' backstories. It actually has several episodes dedicated to showing us how these characters got to be where they are. It's showing us their origin story, and that's something that adds so many dimensions and so many layers to them and really helps the audience feel like they know them. And you can't do that in this show. You needed to spend money in order to show Iron Fist's origin story, in order to show us his development and him becoming who he is, and they can't do that because the budget is so small. Actually, I took that completely back. They refuse to do that because the budget is so small, but you absolutely could. You could work a way around that. You could like have it be animated. Like you could have like some really cool like calligraphy style ink just going across the screen, animating his training, animating what happened to him up in this city. You could have like an old scroll that showed his entire journey and the camera just kind of pans over it as he's talking about it. Something to kind of give us an idea of how he got to be where he is. Instead, people just talk about it. People just go, oh yeah, I learned this from the monk at this monastery. That would have been cool to see. Anywho, so anyway, back to the Hand. And he's talking about like, oh, he needed to stand outside the gates to protect them from the Hand, and the Hand was like this boogeyman, and I got trained like this every single day, and I had to rise up against this. Every single thing that he talks about sounds so cool, and we don't see any of it. And as I said, he always kind of talks about in this low, kind of gravelly voice. And by the way, he doesn't give it any of like the grandeur that it should have. He never talks about with like the emotions that he needs to, because as I said, he's talking in that like one tone the entire time. And that's been a problem of mine with this character this entire time, is that he never seems to approach any situation with the emotions that it needs. And that really bugged me in the second episode, because in the second episode, someone finally is convinced he's Danny Rand. Like the guy at the mental institution he's been checked into, who has to decide whether or not he should remain locked up in this institution or be freed, goes, you know what? I finally believe you. I finally believe you are Danny Rand. What happened to you? And he goes, I went up to a mystical city that only appears once every 15 years, and I trained, and I became the living weapon of the Iron Fist, and I can channel my chi into my fist to gain great powers. And I was like, this guy just said he's 5 seconds from letting you free and getting you off these drugs that are keeping you from being able to use your powers, and you don't think that's the wrong thing to say? You don't realize that would sound crazy? And for anybody out there who's going to come in here and go, well, yeah, but he didn't live in this city for all this time, so he doesn't know that that's not a weird thing to say. He went to Kunlun when he was 10. He knows that's not a normal thing people in New York City say, okay? Oh, God. And also, speaking about, like, showing the way that they show his origin story, the only thing that we've really gotten so far was that one little clip of him as a kid being beaten by the monks. And again, I mentioned this thing feels so cheap because it feels like they had to take the first take on everything. And I mean, there's a moment where the kid gets hit, the bat is coming back, he's already got it coming back, and that's when the kid reacts. That's when he jerks his shoulders to it, and it's like, you thought that was okay? You didn't say, let's do it again? Are you freaking kidding me with this? So already, A, you're not able to show all the cool stuff that made Iron Fist who Iron Fist is because you're not willing to spend the budget on this show. And B, you're going through everything so quickly that it really does feel like you're just taking the first take on everything. It feels like you did not have time to put all this together. Every single thing about this just feels so cheap, and that really hit me in that 6th episode when he was going through the hands tournament, because as I said, when he first goes in there and he's got like that little place where he initiates the challenge, it all felt like cardboard. It felt like he could have pushed on those brick walls and he just would have fallen right over. Like, none of it actually feels like they were actually spent the money to craft a really good looking set. And then he goes and he fights the Russian guys. As I said, that didn't look too bad. That looked alright. But then he got to the spider lady. And this was the moment in which I realized the second problem with this show. Is that all the other shows had a tone to it. They had a style. They had a flavor to it. They had a specific thing that they were trying to be, and the people working on that show knew what they were going for and how to accomplish that. Like, for example, with Luke Cage, that was trying to be a modern-day blaxploitation story, and the guy making that I keep wanting to call it a film, and the guy making that show knew exactly how to do that. As soon as he gets to the spider lady, that's when I went, I get what this show wants to be. This show wants to be one of those crazy 1970s kung fu films. One of those crazy, like, if you go back and you watch some of them, like, there are so many times in which there will be just crazy characters in there with their own unique styles, and they use their own unique weapons, and they all have these big goofy personalities, and they're all shot in these crazy locations. That's exactly what this wants to be. And you've got the lady there, and she's got her whole spider thing going on, so it's like, okay, again, looking at this just on the paper, just the script of this, I see what you're going for, and I think that whoever wrote this probably had a good idea in mind for this, but the guy filming it, when they said, okay, let's put up the set, they just put white drapes everywhere. I was like, again, this really looks like you just picked some random location, whatever you could get for that day. And it's like, oh god, okay, spider lady, what do we do? Spiders have webs, white stuff. Just put white drapes everywhere. There is no flavor to that. It really feels, I said this earlier, but I have to bring it back again. Looking at that scene, it really feels like if you got a bunch of kids together and went, for your school play, you're going to put on the Iron Fist story. And they're like, okay, what's our budget and how many props do we have? Just this? Alright, I guess we can make this look like a spider lady lives here. Okay, cool. Like, they couldn't have come up, you couldn't even gone to like Party City and gotten fake cobwebs to put everywhere. Even that would have been better. Before I saw this episode, before I saw episode 6, I went into work after watching the first 4 episodes, and I was thinking, yeah, I got some problems, but you know, at episode 4, it was starting to turn around. It was starting to get better. And I was talking to my coworkers, and they were all really enjoying it, actually. They all didn't understand the complaints that people had, but they were all starting to get really into it. And then I and a coworker kind of came to an agreement in which we said, hey man, even if I have problems with it and even if you like it, there's one thing we can both agree on. It's still better than Arrow, because this show shares a lot of similarities with Arrow, and I was like, yeah, it's still better than Arrow. I mean, come on. And I went home and I watched that, and I watched episode 6, and looking at that spider lace thing, I was just like, even Arrow would have done this better. Even Arrow would have gone, we gotta come up with something cool for her lair. Something cool for where she's going to fight him. And then just the editing. The editing is so damn bad in these fights. There's a moment in which the two of them charge at each other and the camera zooms in on them as they're charging, and I could tell from looking at it, they did not zoom the camera in. The camera remained still. They zoomed it by cropping it in post, which is the laziest goddamn thing you can do for that. They didn't even change the camera on this. They just went, I guess it would look better if we did this. Crop, zoom, cool. Because like they start getting like pixelated. They start getting a little bit fuzzy when they start running at each other. I'm like, that doesn't happen when you zoom in with a camera. Trust me, I've done a lot of crappy camera work in my life. I can spot it when I see it. And then from there, I've already talked about this, but he goes and he fights the Weapons Master. And the Weapons Master fight, it's still, I have to come back to this. It's one of the worst edited things I've seen. The moment when he actually activates the Iron Fist and is about to punch him is one of the most awkward looking things I've ever seen in this show, in any Netflix show, in any show period. It's inexcusable how bad that fight scene was. And I'm sorry guys, I know that I am ragging on this show and not talking about as many of the things I have been enjoying about, but this is the post-Geekout reactions. My reaction right after I saw something, I was getting up there. I was starting to have hope because, like I said, episode 3, you know, it's fine. It wasn't as bad as the first 2. Episode 4, I'm getting intrigued here. Episode 5, oh, we're getting into this whole, like, drug smuggling thing. Oh, he's starting to do stuff at the company. I'm really enjoying seeing this guy who does kind of have the heart goal going in there and being like, well, why are we doing all this evil stuff? We need to turn this around. Oh, that's a good story to tell. You could actually do some stuff with that. And then episode 6, the one where they just needed to nail it. They flopped so hard that it set me back down to 0. It set me back down to as bad as I was in those first 2 episodes, in which I was like, I don't know if I have hope for this show anymore. And I know there's so many people, like I said, I opened this by saying, I know there's people out there who are going to say like, well, you're only doing this to get on the Critic bandwagon. I'm not. Guys, one of the reasons why I film these things just off the top of my head is because I want you to see the emotions that I have from this stuff. This is not me getting on the hype train. This is me as an Iron Fist fan coming in here and going, what did you do? What did you do? This is me as a Marvel fanboy. A guy who will gladly call himself a Marvel fanboy. A guy who even stood by Iron Man 2 and the Incredible Hulk and Thor 2 and said, they're fine. They're fine. They don't deserve all the hate. I mean, they're not good, but they're fine. Even that guy is coming in here now going, I can't defend this. I really can't. No pun intended, but I can't defend this. And all I can hope is that in the second half, this gets better. I'm really hoping it gets better. And that the Defenders is just made by someone else. Is that the Defenders, they saved all their money for that. They saved it up. And that they do not have the people that worked on Iron Fist working on that. Like I said, I hope this is their B team. I hope this is just whatever they could spare because they had to get the Defenders shot now. I hope it's because the Punisher got approved and they're like, oh shoot, now we have to divide up our focus. I guess we can't put all of our main guys on Iron Fist now. Oh my god. Guys, this hurt. This freaking hurt. But I have 6 more episodes to go. So come back and we'll see what I thought of those. I'm thinking back on everything that I said and I realized I was just rambling throughout a lot of this. Probably a lot of it didn't even make sense. I apologize for that. But holy cow, dude, I can't. I can't even. I'm going to use that tired old expression that I hate when people use because there's nothing else I can really say, but I can't even. God damn it. Alright. Well, thank you guys. Hit that subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter and Tumblr at Professor Thorgy. I do Twitch streams sometimes. You can check that out at Professor Thorgy on Twitch. And see you next time. Bye.